ECON 215, Introduction to Economy of Ghana. This is session 10, and we will look at the agriculture sector. So I would give you a very simple overview of what we will do in this session. The agric sector is a very important one, and we've all known that the Ghanaian economy is an agrarian economy, but that is not so. Again, why? Because over time the agric's contribution to GDP has changed. So yes, Ghana used to be an agricultural or an agrarian country, but it is not so again. Things have changed. But nevertheless, the agric sector is still very, very important to us. Why? Because of its rate of employment to the Ghanaian economy. So yes, in this sector, we will pay attention to the agric. So in this session, we will pay attention to the agricultural sector because of its importance to the creation of what? Employment. So that's why we want to pay attention to this. What are the goals in this session? At the end of this session, we would know the components of the agric sector, and we would also appreciate the contribution of the sector to Ghana's economy. And then also we would look at the performance of the sub-sectors that we have in the agric sector in Ghana. So these are the key topics that we would have a look at today. First, we will look at the structure and the nature of the agric sector, and then we would also have a look at the role of the agric sector in the Ghanaian economy. And then the third bit, we would have a look at the performance of the agric sector in Ghana. So this would have to do with the trends of the agric sector over time. So with the reading list, you may have to refer to the reading materials that we have listed on your Sakai platform. So the agriculture sector. What is the structure and that of the nature of the agriculture sector in Ghana? Yes, the agriculture sector is the broad sector, but within this broad sector, we have what is called the sub-sectors. Okay. The first one we would have a look at is the cocoa sub-sector. That is where that is a sub-sector where we produce cocoa beans, paste, butter, and then so on. The other sub-sector is the crops and the livestock sub-sector. There is also the forestry and that of the logging sub-sector, which is also a very important sub-sector. The other is the fisheries sub-sector. So now let's look at the nature of agriculture in Ghana. There are basically two types of agriculture systems in Ghana. The first one, which is actually predominant, is the subsistent small-scale farming. Okay, the subsistent small-scale farming, and then the other is the mechanized large-scale farming, which I would explain as we go on into detail. So now let's have a look at the nature of the agric sector again in Ghana. One is that yes, it is reliant on rainfall. So yes, rainfall is the main determinant of the cultivation and the irrigation of these farms. Yes, the other is that we use, or our farmers use, low-level technology from day to day. Yes, in this case, we still use the, what do you call it, the hoes and the cutlasses and all the higher labor-intensive, applications. And then also the mode of farming is predominantly the traditional farming methods in this case. And just as I said earlier on, the nature of the farms we have in Ghana is the small-scale subsistence farming. Okay, so you would have a very small land and a very small people farming on this land, and what they do basically is just to farm and then eat and then sell the surplus that they would have. The other has to do with the low financing, and yes, with this, the farmers are not able to have access to what do you call it, the credits at very low interest rate. These farmers are not attractive to the financial institutions. Now let's go on to the second topic, and that, as I said earlier on, has to do with the role of agriculture in the Ghanaian economy. The agric sector over the years has actually played a very important role. The agric sector from 1970s to the 1980s has contributed about 55% to GDP. As I said earlier on, the agric sector's contribution to GDP has been waning over the years. From 2009 to 2014, the sector's contribution has averaged around 25.6% of GDP. In this case, it is recording the least share of GDP in 2011, and then 2012 all through to 2014. In 2014, it recorded about 21.5% of GDP. So as I said earlier on, yes, over the years, the contribution of the agric sector has been in a decline. What has actually taken over in this case is the service sector that has growing influence on that of the GDP. But nevertheless, the agric sector has many contributions, or has made numerous contributions. Here we would have a look at some of the contributions. One is that this sector contributes to foreign exchange earnings. So the agric sector over the years has been contributing to foreign exchange earnings. And yes, it has contributed substantially to foreign exchange earnings as a result of the export of cocoa, timber, and the non-traditional export of other crops. So the sub-sectors, especially for cocoa and that of timber, has made very significant gains in terms of the contribution to foreign exchange earnings. The agric sector contributed about 76.2% of total export earnings in 1986. Although yes, its contribution has been in a decline over the years, as we can see. The agric sector also contributes to government revenue and food supply, which is also key here. Government gets its revenue from the agric tax and that of duties on cocoa in the agric sector. Also, the issue of food supply is a key. The agric sector produces food items to meet the nutritional and then the healthy living needs of the population, and so that is key. Without the food from the agric sector, these nation cannot. Workers in this nation cannot work because they need food in this instance. The agric sector or this sector also serves as a raw material base for the various the industries that we have. So the agric sector then provides a linkage with the industrial sector in order to facilitate the value chain addition, which also feeds manufacturing in this case. There are several examples of these that we can find. The other key contribution of the agric sector has to do with its contribution to employment, and the agric sector is key as of today because of this key contribution, and that is the contribution to employment. Yes, although the contribution of the agric sector to GDP has been waning over the years, we can see that its contribution to employment has not been. It's actually been on the rise. So the share of agric in the GDP has been on the decline over the years, but the sector still contributes more to employment generation than the other sectors. So at least 50% of the economic active population is employed in the agric sector, and that is key. Now let's have a look at the third topic here. Here we just want to look at the performance of the agric sector in Ghana, which means we want to look at the trends in terms of how this sector has been, or how it's been doing over the years. So let's have a look at the overall performance of the agric sector. The agric sector in the year under review, which is 2014, saw a decline in the growth rate as compared to the 2013 figures, with an overall growth rate of 4.6%. This year's growth rate, which is 2014's growth rate, is accounted for by the contribution of all the sub-sectors except the fisheries sub-sector, which witnessed a fall in the growth from 5.7 in 2013 to negative 5.6% in 2014. Now let's look at the performance of the cocoa sub-sector. This is a very critical sub-sector that can be found under the agric sector. Yes, the cocoa sub-sector continues to be a major foreign exchange earner for Ghana's economy. And in the year 2014, measures were taken under the cocoa high-tech fertilizer application and the cocoa disease and pest control programs, as well as the provision of the operational inputs to ensure a very higher productivity in this sector. But let me say that in spite of all these interventions, the production of cocoa fell by 5.2% in 2014 in this case. The production actually dropped from around 945,000 tons in 2012 2013, cropping season to about 896,000 tons in the 2013 14 season. So we have looked at the performance of the cocoa sector. How has the food crop sector also fared over the years? The food crop sector, yes, has actually increased, with cassava recording the most increase in output over the years. Other food crops like yam and the other ones have also seen some changes in terms of its output over the years. And then also we can talk about the cereals here. There has been a marginal drop in that of the output for maize and then the other cereals. There has also been a drop in the area that is cultivated, or the area under cultivation for maize in this case, as well as for the other cereals, say sorghum, millet, and then the other ones. So this is the end of this particular section on the agric sector. We would continue with the agriculture sector in the next session, which is session 11. Thank you for your attention.